Xavier Porter, live and direct, Shoot the Fire podcast, your host in the building. We got a special guest on the line today. Actually, we got a special guest in the studio. Our producer is stepping up to the mic today, Mr. Nat Wilkins. What's going on, Nat?
What's up, X? How you doing, man?
All right, Nat is the founder of BrooklynFights. Nat and I have partnered up on a lot of things. We partnered up on BrooklynFights, and now we're partnered up on Shoot the Five. I'm so happy to finally get Nat on the phone. You know, Nat is a straightforward guy. He lets you know exactly what's on his mind. And this past weekend, we had a lot of things take place within Professional Fighters League, as well as Bellator, as well as the UFC. So I wanted to, especially speak to Nat about some things. I attended Bellator yesterday, Bellator 208. Nat attended the PFL playoff out there in Long Beach, California, and we also want to talk about what's going on within the UFC with regards to Kabib and 50 Cent, and I wanted to get Nat's thoughts on it. So, Nat, what was your thoughts on the PFL last night with the playoff system?
I mean, as always, it was a great event. You know, these guys, the PFL, they're legit players. They've come up with a great formula. And now we're in the second week of playoffs that happened last night in Long Beach out here in California. And it was the light heavyweight and the lightweight division. And what's really interesting about this sort of playoff round is the fighters fight twice in one night. So if you win your first fight, which is a 2-round fight, then you advance to a 3-round fight later in the evening, approximately an hour to an hour and a half later in the evening. So it was really, really interesting to see guys who had already been in a fight and then had kind of had a little bit of a break, but come back out, in some cases, obviously quite swollen and battered. And it was also really interesting to observe the cadence. You know, in some of the earlier PFL fights, we saw just incredible explosive action right out of the gates with a lot of early knockouts because fighters were compelled to try to rack up points and make it into the playoffs. What was a little different last night, because we were in the playoffs and these guys knew that they were going to have to fight twice in one night if they won the first fight, is the first fight of the night, the first round of fights, tended to be a little more reserved, and the fighters were a little more conservative, more like a traditional, what you would expect in a traditional fight, right?
Yeah.
But by the second fight, which is the 3-round fight, things definitely got more heated up, and there were some really interesting fights. I mean, these guys were definitely out there acting like there's $1 million on the line.
Gotcha.
And so, couple of highlights. So, Rashid Magomedov, one of the Magomedov brothers, he advanced to the finals. He will be fighting on New Year's Eve in New York City at the theater in MSG. Hopefully, I should be able to make it out there for that.
Oh, yeah!
Right on, man. So he defeated Will Brooks and Thiago Tavares. Tavares was pretty decisive, second-round TKO. Will Brooks was actually like a draw, and there was a tiebreaker through which Magomedov ended up winning.
Wow.
And, and another really interesting highlight of the evening, Sean O'Connell. So he's he's a light heavyweight. He's an Irish brawler-style fighter. And, I mean, this guy must have hands of stone because, I mean, he's a puncher. He loves to box. And he didn't necessarily, look like he was always had the edge on his fights, but he defeated Dan Swan by a majority decision. And then in his second fight, he scored a really powerful first-round KO of his opponent, this guy Rama. So Sean O'Connell will be advancing into the finals to face Magalis.
Mm-hmm.
And here was the thing that was personally, for us, right, we're supporters of Chris Wade. We've had him on the show.
Absolutely.
He's a great guy. Yeah, and so Chris Wade, man, he came out and he killed it in his first fight. He looked awesome. I mean, this guy is a machine. Like, he is fit. You can just tell, like, he eats, sleeps, breathes fighting, right? And he looks really good, man. His second fight, though, was against Natan Schultz, who is a Brazilian. And Schultz ended up winning that fight via decision, and that was a little controversial. You know, Wade, first of all, has a tremendous striking game. He has a tremendous kick game. Schultz, maybe a little more of a grappler, right? And Wade looked awesome. I mean, he landed in that fight at least 2 spinning elbows, maybe 3. He landed a bunch of hard punches, but he lost in the decision. I don't want to call it a robbery, because, first of all, I'm not an MMA judging expert, and second of all, it wasn't a robbery. But, in my opinion, Chris Wade probably could have walked away with the win from that fight, man. So that was disappointing because here's the big if, man. And Chris Wade, I mean, you've seen Chris Wade fight. The guy is an exciting fighter to watch, right?
Yes, he is.
So if he'd won, he would have been facing Magomedov in the finals, man. And that's a fight I would have really loved to see. Schultz, again, is a great fighter, not taking anything away from him. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles, man. More power to everybody. And everybody last night was out to win, man. And some people came away victorious and others didn't. But everybody fought hard. Everybody was out there to pursue a victory last night.
Gotcha. And looking online and Instagram and seeing everybody's thoughts and comments on that fight, that particular fight that we're talking about, Chris Wade against Schultz. A lot of people feel like you just said, a lot of people feel like Wade won the fight. They felt like he threw well. And looking at the statistics, he was the more active fighter, more strikes. He didn't stuff too many takedowns. But outside of that, he was the more aggressive fighter and appeared to throw more strikes at his opponent. However, the win went to Schultz. And like you said, if Chris Wade would have won, that would probably made for a great fight with Magomedov. I hope I pronounced his name correctly, on December 31st, or is it 31st or is it 30th in New York City? The finals. Yeah. So it'd have been like a hometown guy fighting in the finals in New York City, New Year's Eve. So that'd have been fantastic. That's something that I know a lot of people were looking to see and hoping to see. Just like where Andre Harrison from Long Island, they were hoping to probably see him in the finals, and it just didn't happen. But last night, there was a lot of things that happened last night. I forgot to mention. Well, we'll get to that. But last night, before I even get to Terence Crawford, last night I was at the Bellator fight, Bellator 208, and I was watching Chael Sonnen and Fedor, and I was saying to myself, I've always known how much of a dominating force Fedor is, but yesterday I got to see it up close, right in my face. And he is one tough dude. He is strong. He's like a big. He reminds me of a big Kabib, in a sense, even though he's older. But he just was very, very strong, and he's a physically huge man that was able to get out of some of the grappling moves that Chael Sonnen was trying to put on. I don't want to chop his last name up. I'm gonna just say Fedor, But it was a really good fight yesterday. It was a really good fight, and it sets up the final fight with him against Ryan Bader, who defeated Matt Mitrione on Friday night before this fight actually took place. So I can't wait to see that fight. I can't wait to see the final fight. Hopefully it'll take place in New York City. We'll see what happens. But hats off to Chael Sonnen. He tried. He's one of the best wrestlers in mixed martial arts, and he was almost successful in pulling off the defeat against Fedor. It just so happens that he kind of overexerted himself when he had him in his hold where he was on his back and he was trying to flip him into like a choke, but he kind of slipped out of it, and then Fedor just went to work, and then that was it. Flurry of punches, knees to the head, he was done. However, I like to talk about UFC. I like to talk about Kabib, and we talked about it last week. I'm still trying to figure out what's going to take place with Kabib because I don't know if you're aware, but he was suspended, and they are holding his purse. They are suspended. He's suspended. They held his purse. However, Conor was paid. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know, man. I mean, look, it's fighting. Stuff happens, right? And I understand needing to uphold the standard of professional conduct, but there's a lot of bad blood between these guys, right? And, sure, there was some behavior that wasn't great, but, I mean, this is combat sports, right? I mean, the guy fought. He won. He should get paid. He should get paid all of his money.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. And but it is what it is. And so 50 Cent steps up. And 50 Cent has this great deal in place with Bellator and DAZN. So, the money is there. And I believe they can possibly, if they really put the deal in place, they could possibly buy him out of his contract from UFC. And in my opinion, if you get Kabib, if you're able to get the top fighter in your company, if you're able to get the top fighter out of that company who's undefeated, undisputed, and is still on the rise, still at the age he's still on the rise, and he's just dominating everybody, this might just be the end of UFC before our eyes. Because if you do this business move is a move that's like a silent killer. It's like chess. You make a certain move on the board to kind of like get on the inside of your man's defense, and then kind of like just maneuver around in order to take him out. And this is that move right now. Bellator, DAZN, 50 Cent are playing chess, and if they are able to steal one of the best pieces on the table, which is the queen. I know you're familiar with chess. I believe the queen is the best piece on the table. If you're able to steal the queen. And right now, when I say queen, I mean the queen is Kabib for UFC. If you're able to steal the queen off from your opponent, that tells me these guys are almost defeated. Because Conor's going to sell tickets, but who's to say he's going to win again? You see what I mean? And
man. I mean, look.
Yeah.
This is high business drama, man. This is like combat sports, media, theater, right? I mean, this is crazy stuff. You got Bellator possibly poaching, the cash cow from the UFC. Mm-hmm. You got like ideas of lawsuits being tossed around. We got people like not getting paid because of conduct. I mean, wild stuff, man. All I know is all this stuff, this kind of drama, these little spats, all it does is it just grows and grows and grows combat sports, man, because people love this kind of drama.
And then you also have, and then like you just mentioned, all that together, and then you add in the PFL playoff system type style. It's great right now. It's a great time for mixed martial arts, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of, I'm glad you said that. Like, we've often talked about how, like, there's sort of UFC number 1, Bellator number 2, and PFL number 3, right? And we've seen PFL have quite a lot of success with this fairly novel formula, this league-like formula this season, right? And so it would be super interesting because you can make the case that PFL is going to be right up on Bellator's coattails. I mean, they've got great media distribution. They got TV. They got streaming. They got huge investors, Tony Robbins. I mean, there's a big list of like
Kevin Hart.
Right, dude. And so, like, if Bellator is able to do a power play that pulls the UFC down, then this is like a pretty interesting, three-way fight.
Mhm. Yeah, because then you can look at the possibility that some of those fighters in UFC going to either or, Bellator or PFL, increasing their stature across the board again. Amazing. This is pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. But last but not least, I wanted to talk about Mr. Terence Crawford. Mr. Terence Bud Crawford. Ooh, my. So last night he put on a marvelous display once again. Tremendous hand speed, tremendous footwork, tremendous athleticism, tremendous all around. His performance was strictly tremendous in his 12-round domination of Jose Benavidez Jr., formerly who was undefeated. Benavidez Jr. came into the ring. I mean, there was a lot of bad blood going into the fight, a lot of back and forth banter for years, not just a couple months, but for years, on social media, face-to-face, things of that nature. And but now, and then the weigh-in, they did the little pushing and shoving, and Bud Crawford swung on him and just missed him with a right hook. I find it odd that Bud Crawford swung on him with a right hook in the weigh-in, and that was the last punch he landed on him. You know, I don't think a lot of people see that, but I see it. That's just one of those meticulous things I caught. But he dominated this guy, Nat. I mean, he dominated him. He broke him down systematically and closed the show with a devastating right uppercut that I don't think anyone saw coming. You know, it was like he just threw it up real quick and split the guard, and that was it for him. And then followed up with a two punch combination with the left hook, with the right hook, I should say. You know, so hats off to Terence Crawford. Congratulations on that, on your win. You remain the WBO champion. We'll see what happens next with your career. Everybody's screaming for him to fight Errol Spence. He says he's willing to fight anybody, whoever and anybody. So this week we're going to try to get on some other guests. We're going to come back to you with another episode of Shoot the Five. Our co-host, Pat DeMoss, he's probably somewhere in the woods chasing alligators or something. You know, he did let us know he was going away, have some fun. So we'll probably get him back on this week. But it was definitely a pleasure to have Nat on. We hope to have Nat on more frequently because he adds so much information to mixed martial arts and to combat sports, and especially to the podcast. So, Nat, I thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, my pleasure, man.
All right, and we're gonna get back on soon enough. Stay tuned, stay locked. Follow us on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, Brooklyn Fights, BrooklynFights.com, Brooklyn Fights 1, Shoot the 5-1. Follow us on YouTube as well. Make sure when you go on YouTube, you hit the like, you hit the comment, you hit the share, and you hit the notification button because we love the comments. Yes, we love the comments. We love the dialogue. So make sure you hit the like, share, subscribe, and notification button. Shoot the 5, Brooklyn Fights. We'll be back soon. Peace.